Hello, my name is Marion. I'm also known as Miss Mustard Seed, as some of you know, and I'm here to show you how I antiqued and distressed this, this headboard, which you can see behind me, and I need to do that same process to the footboard. As you can tell, there's quite a contrast in the color as well as just the finished look of the piece. This one looks very bright, the color looks a little flat, and that's normal until you do the finishing steps. So if you get to this step and you think, oh, it doesn't look the way I envisioned it, just see the process through. So the first thing that we're going to do is distress it. And distressing means that you're going to remove paint off of the surface. And that's to simulate the years of wear and tear that can happen on a painted piece. I like to use several different things, but for this I'm going to use a fine sanding sponge. And the reason why I'm using fine is I don't want it to be heavily distressed and scratched up. I just want it to be lightly worn around the edges so you can still really see the paint clearly. Now, if I was going to do the entire piece right now, I would wear a dust mask, and that's just because if you don't, you're going to end up cleaning a bunch of dust out of your nose, which isn't fun. So put on a dust mask if you're doing the whole piece. I'm going to start rubbing paint away from just the edges, what I would call the high points of the piece. And that means the corners. I'm not going to put a big wear spot right here in the middle because that doesn't typically happen naturally. But wear and tear does happen often around the edges of a piece of furniture. So that's where I'm going to focus my attention here, around this top part. And then along the sides here. And I do have some layers of paint as well, so this distressing is going to bring out those layers. You're going to be able to see the blue, which is French enamel, underneath this sort of pinkish coral color, which is apron strings. And the yellow is mustard seed yellow, and the white is linen. And when I painted this bed, I put bonding agent in all of the coats of paint so that I would have a nice body to the paint, and I wanted it all to adhere really well. I didn't want to have any chipping or flaking. Okay, so I've distressed the edges of this area right here. And then what I'm also going to do is rub the sanding sponge just very gently over the entire surface. And what that does is it sort of smooths out the paint, and it also brings out any imperfections, and it sort of knocks down that newness of the paint. I'm not wearing away any spots like I did up here. I'm just lightly rubbing over the surface. Just like that. And I've sort of brought out a little bit of the texture that was underneath the bed, or underneath the paint on the bed already. And I'll just wipe away the dust real quick. And then usually on a piece, I would put furniture wax on first. And what that would do is sort of seal in the color before I put on a decorative wax like an antiquing wax or the white wax. But I really want to mute these colors, so I'm going to put the antiquing wax directly on top. And to apply the antiquing wax, I'm going to wear a glove. That's not because it's dangerous, it's because it can get really messy on your hands, the pigment, when I'm rubbing the wax away. So I've learned just put a glove on, it's going to save you a lot of time scrubbing your hands. And I'm using our large wax brush. And if you've seen my tutorial on putting on furniture wax, I just put on a tiny little bit For the antiquing wax, for this piece, I'm going to really load up my brush, and that's because I'm using it everywhere and I want it to be really heavy. And then I'm going to really work it into the edges of the piece as well as just over the entire surface. So especially an area like this where there's a lot of carved detail, I'm going to really get it into those nooks and crannies and around this shell detail as well. I'm really going to, like, I'm putting a lot of pressure to really work it in. You can see how it's just toning down the color. Okay, so I've just applied it in this small area, and I want to work in a small area so I don't do the whole piece and then it dries and then I come back and try to wipe excess away, because I don't want these swirly brush marks. That doesn't look very authentic. So I'm taking a cloth. This is just an old t-shirt that is cut up, and I'm going to wipe it away. Wipe away the excess. Whoop! Almost lost the headboard there. Okay, so see, I would normally just use my right hand for this, for the glove. This is the part that gets a little messy. And then I'm wiping away the excess. And as you can see, it leaves the wax in all the little recesses and the nooks and crannies, so you get this authentically aged look. And it sort of softened these colors as well. You can see the difference between right here and right here. And it's normal to see this, some color wiping off on the rag from the pigment of the antiquing wax. And that's going to stop once the piece cures. I would give it a good 30 days to fully cure before you're rubbing clothes against it or something like that. Just be gentle with the bed. Maybe you want to wait to put the linens on for about 30 days. I know it's hard to wait, but you definitely don't want to get antiquing wax all over your linens. And when you're wiping away, that also buffs the finish. And you'll know that you've put on a good amount of wax if it feels like right now it feels totally dry to the touch. It should not feel wet or sticky. You shouldn't have a lot of resistance as you're rubbing your cloth. That way you know that you've applied the right amount. If you still see the flat paint through, then you haven't applied enough. And if it feels sticky and gummy, you've applied way too much. You need to get your brush, continue to work it around and spread that wax out, and then try buffing it again with a cloth. So I'm going to do this to the whole footboard and to the rails, and I can't wait to show you the finished product.